Welcome everyone to the History of Militaries Across the World podcast. My name is Craig, and I will be your host for this podcast. Today, we will be talking about the history of the Slovenian military and how they are moving forward. First, I would like to start off with how Slovenia was created. Slovenia and Croatia both declared formal independence on June 25th, 1991. The Yugoslav Army, or JNA, briefly intervened in Slovenia, but it withdrew after 10 days, effectively confirming Slovenia's separation. The Serb minority in Croatia declared its own independence from the Republic and its desire to join Serbia, sparking violence between armed militias. The JNA intervened in the conflict, ostensibly to separate the combatants, but it quickly became apparent that favored the Croatian Serbs. The war that followed devastated Croatia, resulting in tens of thousands dead and hundreds of thousands of people displaced. In Bosnia Herzegovina, I'm sorry if I mispronounce anything in this podcast, I am working on it. A referendum on the independence took place in March 1992, but was boycotted by the Serb minority. The Republic declared its independence from Yugoslavia in May 1992, while the Serbs in Bosnia declared their own areas in independent republic. Macedonia itself also declared independence following a September 1991 referendum, and a U.S. peacekeeping and monitoring force was dispatched to the border with Serbia to monitor violence. Croatia and Slovenia were internationally recognized in January 1992, with Bosnia's independence recognized soon thereafter. The three countries joined the United Nations, on May 22, 1992. Serbia and Montenegro formed a new Federal Republic of Yugoslavia as a successor state to old Yugoslavia, but the international community did not recognize its successor claim. Over the next 3 years, the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and displaced millions from their homes as Europe witnessed the most horrific fighting on its territory since the end of World War II. In 1998 to 1999, violence erupted again in Kosovo, with the province's majority Albanian population calling for independence from Serbia. A NATO bombing campaign and economic sanctions forced the Milosevic regime to accept a NATO-led international peacekeeping force. The province was placed under UN administrative mandate. With the economy crumbling, Milosevic lost his grip on power in 2001, was arrested, and turned over to the International Crimes Tribunal. In The Hague, he died in prison in 2006, before his trial concluded. In 2008, Kosovo declared independence and was recognized by the US and most European states, despite Russia's objections. Now the history of the Slovenian military. The beginnings of the Slovenian Armed Forces date back to May 1991, when at the 710th Pekir Training Center, or TC, and the 510th LGTC, an experimental training service of the first generation of the Slovenian military in the modern history of Slovenia began. In this period, Slovenia was formerly still a republic of the former Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Nevertheless, following a successful independence referendum on 23rd December 1991, the Slovenians were in their minds already bidding Yugoslavia farewell. The initial joy that overwhelmed the first conscripts as they were arriving to the Peculiar TC was soon outshone by unpleasant developments when the leaders of the Yugoslav People's Army, or YPA, on 23rd May 1991 attempted to prevent these intentions with aggression. Members of the 710th Peculiar TC did not give in, and on 2nd June 1991, solemn swearing ceremonies of the first peacetime soldiers of the Republic of Slovenia took place at both training centers. On 26 October 1991, after the 10-day war for Slovenia, which followed the Declaration of Independence on 25 June 1991, YPA members left Slovenia permanently. Upon gaining independence, Slovenia organized its military defense in a way it was organized in the former common country, i.e., with conscription defense forces of the Republic of Slovenia, at the time called the Territorial Defense, were composed of unit staff with peacetime and wartime establishments. The peacetime establishments being manned with members of the active component and the conscripts. Their development quickly followed an example of Western armed forces. After successful resistance to the JNA, following the 10-day War of Independence in 1991, Slovenia faced the challenge of establishing independent armed forces. The Slovenian armed forces underwent a major reorganization from 2003 to 2005, with the goal of changing from a conscription-based territorial defense force to a professional, deployable, and combat-capable military within NATO, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization. A substantial reduction was made in the wartime strength of the SAF from 76,000 in 1999 to around 39,000 members in 2002. The transition to a professional army with the contractual reserves would enable a further reduction of the size of the wartime strength of the SAF to 18,000 members when Slovenia joined NATO. At the end of 2003, the SAF had 24,500 members, of which the professional army numbered 6,376 members, and 1,183 people were employed in the defense part of the MOD, or Ministry of Defense. In 2003, a total of 981 new employees were recruited into the SAF, and 186 employees left. As of 2004, it was planned that by 2008, the SAF would have around 15,000 members, of which the professional force would number around 8,000 members, while around 1,100 people would be employed in the defense part of the MOD. In the period of 2010 to 2015, the level of employment in the defense system would not increase. New recruitment would be oriented towards increasing the quality of personnel. It is estimated that in 2015, the SAF would have up to 14,000 members, of which the professional force would number in at least 8,500 members, while around 1,000 people would be employed in the defense part of the MOD. The SAF met its downsizing goal by transforming itself from a primarily conscripted, territorially oriented defense force of 87,000 personnel with 95% reserves. By 2006, the SAF was a professional volunteer force consisting of approximately 7,300 active duty personnel, or 44%, 1,300, or 8% contracted reserves, and 8,000, or 48%, conscripted reserves, and was reconstructing to become an expeditionary force capable of meeting its NATO and EU needs, or responsibilities and obligations. The goal of the SAF was to downsize the force by 2010 to 8,500 active duty personnel and 5,500 contracted reserves. Conscription ended earlier than expected in October 2003, and compulsory reserve service ended in 2010. As of 2009, Slovenia's professional force included 7,094 soldiers and 4,302 reservists. As of January 2010, Slovenia's professional force included 7,593 soldiers and 1,712 reservists. The force structure consisted of one fully professional motorized infantry brigade and two cadre reserve first mechanized brigades. The professional brigade represented Slovenia's deployable reaction force. The current force structure consists of one fully professional motorized infantry brigade and two cadre reserve first mechanized brigades. The professional brigade represents Slovenia's deployable reaction force. The Slovene armed forces also include a small air force equipped with helicopters and turboprop fixed-winged aircraft. A naval attachment, including a coastal patrol boat. The United States provides bilateral military assistance to Slovenia, including through the International Military Education and Training, or IMET, program, the Foreign Military Finance, or FMF, program, the State Partnership Program aligned with Colorado, the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies, the EUCOM Joint Contract Team Program, and the Regional Counterterrorism Fellowship Program, or CTFP. Relations with the EU and joining the EU. Slovenia is a member of the European Union, the United Nations, and NATO, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and other associations in the global community. Slovenia is an indivisible part of the global family and a recognized and active member thereof. The European Union is Slovenia's most important economic, development, political, and legal environment. While Slovenia also fosters closer ties in its neighborhood, the Mediterranean, within the framework of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Prior to accession, Slovenia adapted its legislation to EU regulations, except in areas where certain exceptions and transitional periods were agreed in negotiations. On 23 March 2003, the majority of Slovenian citizens voted in favor of Slovenia joining the EU. In a referendum on Slovenia's accession to the EU, and on 1 May 2004, Slovenia became a full member of the EU after completing the accession process. Relations with the U.S. Slovenia and the United States have enjoyed a strong bilateral relationship since President George H. W. Bush recognized Slovenia's independence on April 7, 1992, several months after Ljubljana declared independence from the former Yugoslavia. The two countries worked closely together to resolve succession issues following the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the United States supported Slovenia's entrance into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, in 2004. As well as other Euro-Atlantic agreements and institutions, the United States and Slovenia maintain strong cooperative relations on a broad range of bilateral, regional, and global issues. The United States and Slovenia are also cooperate in promoting stability and Euro-Atlantic integration of the West Balkan countries. Other interests include deepening our military cooperation and bilateral trade and investment ties. Moving forward with the Slovenian military, a major reorganization of the Slovenian armed forces is currently underway with the goal of making them more efficient and cheaper. More than half of all commands have been disbanded, which has made commanding the subordinate units easier and faster. Soldiers are to be located nearer to their homes in order to minimize travel costs, since the Slovenian armed forces do not have enough modern armored vehicles to maintain 3 motorized battalions fulfilled at every time, 1 wheeled combat vehicles company and 1 tank company have been organized within the logistics brigade, which now lends vehicles to any of the 4 newly formed infantry regiments. Regarding to the regiments needed, reorganization will also transform 72nd Brigade from a support unit to a combat unit, and thus equaled it with the 1st Brigade. Both brigades added support elements such as air defense, artillery, intelligence, etc. The operational units now consist of Special Operations Units, Naval Division, an Aviation Regiment, and 3 brigades. The 1st, responsible for Western Slovenia, 72nd, responsible for Eastern Slovenia, and Logistics Brigade. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the History of Militaries Across the World podcast. My name is Craig, and I will see you next time. Disclaimer: the sites that I used are the State Department website about Slovenia, Global Security on their site about Slovenia, and gov.si on their website about Slovenia.